IT, can we bring up the...
And while they're doing that, I'll call the meeting to order and we'll do a roll call here. And
Okay.
I think our Assistant City Manager, Ashwini, are you the one that's going to be recording or is it someone else? I'm not sure.
We have Mr. I
yeah.
believe Mr. Mike Blue in the background doing his magic.
Okay.
But just to take the roll call, Steve Chan, are you gonna just go
Yes,
through that?
Mr. Chan, yes.
Here you go. So we have a roll call. We have Chair Mayor Tran here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Council Member Montano,
Here.
staff. We have Assistant City Manager Ashwini Kanta, City Engineer Steve Erickson, I believe. Our Public Works Director is Deputy Public Works Director Elaine. Myself, Steve Chen, Transportation Manager, is here this afternoon.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Tran. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and stand where I'm at. And I'll lead it this afternoon. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. We'll move on here. Approval of agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
I guess second that one. That's approved.
Move to approve the minutes.
All right, I second that. That's approved. And we're going to public forum. Mr. Chan, or I'm not sure who may have the.
I'm checking on the panelists, and I do not see any public.
Steve, we're just gonna see if we have any comments under public forum.
I do not see any public speakers waiting. Hold on. Oh, sorry. I'm okay. Got it. We have. Yes. Let's recognize Meta Uvish Kurma. There.
Thank you very much, Steve, and very good afternoon to Mayor Rich Tran, as well as council member and the city staff. I wanted to mention that with specific to the transportation committee, there has been initiatives that's been taken over in a past few time. I would like to suggest the city council and the mayor that if you could consider the California Volkswagen program for the zero emission shuttle services within the city of Milpitas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any raise hand, Mayor.
Okay, well, just my screen. Okay. All right, we'll move on here from the public forum. Item number 5, business items. All right, I'll look to you, Mr. Chan.
Okay, item number 1, VTA 2021 service plan. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought a dramatic and unforeseen financial shortfall for the Nationwide Transit Agency. To address the shortfall, VTA's 2021 service plan proposes several scenarios of service reduction that could impact Milpitas, which include service frequency, potential route eliminations, and ending service a little earlier. Today, we have VTA staff here to speak to these items. VTA staff Janice and let's see. Can we have VTA staff
Hi there, Steve. Janice Soriano Ramos here.
Great. Welcome, Janice.
Thank you. Shall I
So-
take it away?
Yes,
so I
welcome,
have-
please.
so-
Councilor Montano?
I have one, so Steve, can you repeat those three? You said route elimination and what else?
So VTA today will be presenting some service reduction scenario, which could
Okay.
include service frequency reduction, route reduction, and ending transit service earlier.
Okay,
But
thank you.
the detail will be presented by VTA staff, Janice.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Steve, for including us in your very busy agenda today. Again, my name is Janice Soriano Ramos. I'm joined here with David Lovato, who is our public outreach lead on this effort. And we are here to talk to you today about the annual transit service plan for 2021. Next slide, please. To back up further here, I do want to bring up, you may all remember that we had just recently launched a redesign of our network in December that we called our 2019 New Transit Service Plan. And this was, of course, the biggest major redesign, a biggest undertaking in a couple of decades here. And although we had just kicked it off, of course, COVID-19 has certainly impacted how we would like to move forward with this plan, at least for 2021. But I do want to mention with this service plan, we do intend to kick off a more annual transit plan process where we come back every year with you all, with the public, and of course with our board and our committees as well. Next slide, please. To give you a sense of what a typical annual service planning cycle looks like, this is a snapshot of what it would look like every year, where every springtime we develop a draft plan, we bring it forth with the community and collect feedback on the plan. We revisit that in the fall time and revise the plans according to what we've heard from everyone, and then present a final plan for the board's consideration, the VTA's board consideration in the winter time, so that we can implement every February a new service plan. And although we haven't strayed too much from this time frame, we are working under a much tighter timeline than usual given the circumstances with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so two things are a little different this year. Number one, you'll notice that we are proposing 3 separate plans that reflect varying levels of service, as we are going to have to explore what it looks like if we were to reduce our service compared to what we would normally run in pre-COVID times. And secondly, as I'm sure you have all been experiencing, a lot of our community outreach has primarily been in a virtual setting. So we have been centering our community focus or community outreach focus on community business organizations, Title VI agencies, and really we've been tapping into them as resources to share the details of the plan, and that's been really effective so far in spreading the word and making sure that we're reaching all the right people to gather feedback on the plans. Next slide, please.
I have a question. Can I have a quick
Sure.
question? So when you said 90% plan, 80% plan, 70% plan, is that reduction, like reduction plan?
So when we say 90, 80, 70, we're referring to a percentage of what we normally would have offered. So a 90% plan would refer to a 10% reduction of our normal service. So
Okay.
I can get through the slides and I'll hopefully
thank
address
you.
some questions there.
Thank you.
Welcome. Next slide, please. So I had mentioned we are exploring 3 plans with our board and the public, and why is it that we're doing that? VTA, of course, is experiencing a lot of dramatic, unforeseen financial shortfalls as a result of this, as transit operating budgets really do rely heavily on sales tax revenues, which have taken quite a dip in the past several months. And that has also been reflective of the fact that we haven't seen nearly as much ridership as we normally would have, given social distancing mandates and a reduced travel demand. So what it really is looking like here is that the VTA board will ultimately decide just how much service VTA will be able to provide. So they'll be able to decide if we're faced with a 10% reduction, 20%, or 30% reduction. And while I do want to reiterate here that the plans we're talking about today are just looking at 2021. And this is going to be a really important and necessary first step towards VTA gradually recovering the transit service we're able to provide in future years. And it's our hope that we can increase service following this year, depending on how things go. Next slide, please. So you all may be curious about how ridership has been since the pandemic. And as you can imagine, it's certainly plummeted the minute shelter in place took effect in March, and it hit its lowest point in April. And just to give you a sense of just how much lower it is to compare to what we normally see, in August of last year, if you compare it to August of last year, we've seen about 74% less of what we normally see as far as ridership goes. And this, of course, reflects not just the fact that we've had to reduce service several times throughout the year, but also because we have been limited to what we've been able to seat as far as our bus and light rail capacity goes. And we've really only been able to seat about 10 to 20% of what we've normally been able to seat as far as passengers go. Next slide, please. So this slide is a pretty important slide, although it is high level. It gives you a sense of the several service change themes that we've had to consider across the board when we developed these three plans. And the reductions that you see here that we've had to consider are highlighted here in red. And the left column that's in green there is to give you a snapshot of what our normal service looks like in normal circumstances. And that's just there for your reference. So we've had to consider reductions in areas such as how frequently we run our service, when we end our service, as well as what our service looks like in the midday and the weekend as well. And in some of our plans, we also propose to discontinue routes or add a couple of new routes as well. But we're really only looking at 2 discontinued routes in our 70% plan. And those routes are, by the way, not anywhere affecting Milpitas. So the big takeaway here is that the service that you would see if we were to adopt an 80 plan will more or less look like what we see out there today, but the most severe reductions would be seen if the board were to adopt a 70% plan, with service ending at 10 p.m. and our frequency on our most frequent routes only running every 20 minutes instead of every 15. Next slide, please. For every plan that we deliver, we do conduct a Title VI service equity analysis, which is meant to protect vulnerable communities from being negatively affected than the rest of the population in our service plan. And although public engagement is a huge component of this, and so we're not done with public engagement just yet, in our early findings with this analysis, we found that none of our proposals would cause disparate impacts or disproportionate burdens to minority and low-income communities. Next slide. I wanted to circle back here and talk again about what it means to provide frequent service on our frequent network, because I had mentioned that looking at our frequent network is one of the most impactful ways that we could bring down our service. And I'll highlight here that our 90% plan is the only plan where we are not touching how frequently we run our most frequent routes that tend to carry the most riders. But the 80 and 70% plans really show that impact. And I'm hoping the next few slides will really visually show you how impactful that is. So on the next slide, this is what our 15-minute frequent network would look like under the 90 plan. So you'll see a lot of our routes are still intact and frequent, except for a couple of routes where we drop it down to every 20 minutes. The next slide shows the 80% plan, and it's a much more severe reduction because a lot of our routes are going to see much less frequency at every 20 minutes. And you'll see that our light rail is no longer running at every 20 minutes as well. And then our 70% plan on the next slide shows just 3 routes with a 15-minute frequency. So they're pretty severe reductions. Next slide. And I apologize here, I sent it pretty late. I didn't realize I didn't hit send right away, Steve, but I did have a slide that just before this one that showed impacts specific to the city of Milpitas. And I can generally speak on this and say that most of the bus routes are really looking at frequency tweaks. So most of the frequent routes that are running through Milpitas are really only showing frequency reduced down to 20 in the 80 and 70% plans. And that also includes light rail as well. But if you go on our website, we do have a detailed write-up of the changes for each route by city, and Milpitas is included in there, but I'm happy to take any questions if you wanted to discuss that further. But on this slide, I wanted to focus on how the frequent service, our 15-minute service, is heavily reliant on how we can make BART connections. And in our 80 and 70% plans, it would make it pretty difficult for VTA to guarantee any sort of coordinated service at the BART stations. So that's a huge impact there as well. Next slide. And there's also implications beyond VTA service. And although we talk a lot about how our VTA service is going to be impacted by a frequent network, it also makes impacts on land use development programs and the progress that we've been making at the state and local level as well. And the next few slides are very land use heavy, so I'll try to summarize this as much as possible. But this first slide really refers to how reliant state law is on the definition of a major transit stop, which is a stop that is served by transit service that runs every 15 minutes. So if we were to change that definition to be from every 15 minutes to every 20 minutes in our 80 and our 70 plans, it could potentially impact any development projects and would disqualify them from meeting these very important requirements, such as being able to apply for density bonuses as an affordable housing project. And it could also affect how they're screened out from having to conduct a VMT analysis under CEQA. Next slide, please. And similarly, affordable housing projects under the ASIC program, if any affordable housing project wanted to apply as a transit-oriented development project, it would be required to be adjacent to service that runs every 15 minutes. So that would certainly change in the 80 and 70% plans and would adversely impact them and how competitive they would seem in these application processes. And then the last slide here, or the last slide on land use impacts on the next slide, talks about what it looks like on a regional level, the Plan Bay Area 2050 draft blueprint. And the 15-minute definition has been really fundamental in developing this plan, at least on MTC's level. And if we were to change how frequently our frequent routes run to every 20 minutes, that could potentially affect the municipality's abilities to meet the growth targets that are projected in this program. So just 3 more slides here. On the next slide, I wanted to discuss what we had already shared with our board. So VTA board met for a workshop meeting in mid-September, and we had presented to them that the plan could play out in one of 3 ways. And really, to cut to the chase here, what's been comforting so far is that the board did not seem at all interested in adopting a 70% plan. And as we revise our draft plans and turn them into final plans, it's likely that we would abandon a 70% plan altogether. So that's been comforting to hear so far. So that leaves us with either adopting an 80% plan where we would sustain that for the rest of the year, or we could more ideally jump to a 90% plan, not as early as February, but it would be more of a gradually phased approach where we could revisit what it looks like in the middle of 2021 and bump up to what we consider to be our 90% plan for the rest of the year. And that'll give us a chance to reassess how ridership has been, potentially respond to any public health mandates that may change at the time, and of course, accommodate any reopenings of businesses and schools and whatnot. So that gives us some flexibility there. Next slide, please. So this slide covers some of the community engagement strategies that we've been conducting so far. And if David, you would like to speak a little bit about that, I could transition that over to you.
Yes, thank you, Janice. Yes, my name is David Lovato. I'm with VTA's Community Outreach, assigned to this project to, as much as possible in this pandemic stage, to help engage the public to gather as much public feedback as possible in all three of these scenarios. So what we've done is we've hosted a number of public community meetings, as well as posted them on our VTA YouTube channel. We've also been able to post these presentations on our project page. So there's a number of different ways in case residents have missed the opportunity to have live chats with our planning team and provide feedback and questions right there on the spot. There's still an opportunity to visit our project webpage, really dive deep into these three plans that we've just kind of slightly shared with you, but there's a lot more detail specifically on you as a writer, the routes you take, and each individual plan is what we're asking the public to really weigh in on. We've also just finished a all Spanish presentation version that's going to be going up on our websites, as well as our VTA YouTube channels for those who need translations, as well as a translated presentation that you just saw in Spanish. And we're currently working on the Vietnamese translations as well. So those are going to be available for those that would like presentations in other languages. And I'm actually excited that this is going to be a new facet and tool set that we're going to use for future presentations. Writers can also contact our customer service team, who's taking down and recording every response, every question. And again, like here, as the community is inviting us to guest speak, we provide presentations. In fact, immediately after this meeting, we have one at 4 o'clock that we're going to be guest speaking at and speaking to directly to our writers. And we're looking forward to that conversation after that. Next slide. And just to really hone in on where we're at with this project, right now, the deadline for public comment is next Friday. I mean, obviously that is our deadline to start really gathering and consolidating all the public feedback. We would like to also share what we've heard. Usually after these long county-wide extensive public feedback phases, we like to share what we've heard. So we're drafting that blog post to send out, and we hope that you would help us out to promote, share that blog post so that people can see, here's what we've heard, here's the themes that we're seeing, and this is what the planners are taking back to revise these three proposals. Once we are done with the public comment phase in November, we're gonna, like I said, the planning team is gonna revise and then represent the revised plans to our VTA committees in December. The planning team is gonna be presenting the revised plan to our VTA board, who will ultimately be adopting what they feel is a responsible final 2021 transit plan, which ultimately goes into effect February 8th of next year. Next slide. And that's it. We just wanted to quickly remind everybody, the bottom line at the end of the day is it's a lot to go over, but what we're asking writers to do is to visit the transit, the project page, look at it in a way of each individual proposal, the routes you take, and how that might affect you. Does this plan work for you, yes or no? What I tell everybody in our public meetings is, I know it's easy to say, well, I want 90 because 90, I'm assuming, means nothing will change. But what if our VTA board decides, no, fiscally responsible, let's go the most extreme and choose 70? We're telling writers, start with reviewing the 70 plan first. Does this plan work for you, yes or no? And if not, why? Because our planners need to know. There is room for evaluating those comments, tweaking these proposals that will ultimately go to the board in December. So we are encouraging as many people as possible. So at the end of the day, we're asking this body of government to please share this project webpage, encourage your community members to visit this page, review the proposals, and provide us comments, because the deadline is next Friday. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our two guests from VTA. I'm gonna call it the coolest agency in the county here, VTA. So thanks for being with us today. Councilor Montano, did you have any follow-up?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Thank you, Mayor. So thank you for coming and speaking to us about this sad, this issue. I know right now there's a lot of agencies that are being affected with COVID, and I have a feeling that it's not going to be a pretty picture in the future. It's just the beginning. So do you happen to know what is their operating budget for VTA's operating budget is?
Well, I know, Janice, we do have Franklin in the attendee, who is our deputy in finance. So I'm not sure if he's here raising his hand right now. I can speak to that. He is.
Okay.
So just to let you guys know, Franklin Wong, if we can unmute him, I don't have co-host rights. I'd be doing it for you.
Hi, Franklin. It looks like you're unmuted.
Okay, so thank you, Janice. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. So for fiscal year 2021, the fiscal year that we are in right now, our operating budget amount is about $525 million. And but I guess it depends on what exactly the council member would like to find out more. Because as Janice mentioned, we are dealing with unprecedented drop
Right.
in sales tax revenue and also other sales tax related revenues that we receive from MTC.
Right. The reason why I'm asking is I was just wondering if the board has already done a top-down cuts. Usually, usually some people go through bottom-up cuts. So I'm just wondering if they're doing the cuts on the top first, like management, or are they doing the bottom first, which is the people services, the community. And it seems like you're doing a bottom-up cuts. And if it's this, I know this is really serious, these financial shortfalls, but it seems to me that it should be cut from the top first, because these services are really essential for these working families, especially now that people are going back to work. So I'm just wondering if they have already done cut from the top, or they're just doing the cutting from the bottom.
So
Have they cut from the top already, since these are financial shortfalls?
Councilmember Montano, if I may, first of all, VTA has been fortunate in receiving some CARES Act funding earlier this year, and we have been utilizing those CARES Act funding in terms of bridging certain budget gaps. So at this point, we are exploring, these scenarios, try to provide, as much transit service as we could, matching the demand of transit services. But because as Janice presented earlier, for every 100 people that VTA picked up, same time last year, right now we are only picking up 26 of those. So, but at the same time, we are providing about 3/4 of service levels compared to same time last year. So long story short, we have all the intention to maintain a comprehensive network of transit services to ensure that when the economy is gradually opening up, we'll be able to continue to provide transit services to the riders. So
Okay.
that's one thing.
You mentioned Milpitas will not be so much affected, and I was wondering, why is that? What were the factors in it not being affected that much or that deeply in the routes?
Janice, would you like to pick this up?
Janice, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I can certainly cover some of that. What it came down to is when we were looking at the service changes, to consider across all the plans. One of the fundamental things we looked at was ridership trends before COVID, but we also looked at ridership during COVID times to see if there were any particular routes that we found to be more essential because a lot of our essential riders were continuing to ride service. Another fundamental aspect of it was we wanted to ensure that ridership, particularly at the Milpitas and Berryessa BART stations, we wanted to ensure that that would remain, as much untouched as possible, because BART did just start service in June, and we would hate to make any premature cuts on BART connections there as well. And we did as much as possible to preserve those routes. And most importantly, we tried our darndest to not discontinue any routes altogether. As you'll see, we've only proposed just 2 eliminations, and that's just in the 70 plan. So there's several factors to that. And I did have a slide, and hopefully we can just, sorry about that, Steve, we could share that with you all, that shows the general impacts. And a lot of them have to do with reducing frequency in the 80 plan, since we do have a handful of frequent routes in Milpitas. And there's the Route 104, which is an express route that connects Milpitas BART to the Stanford Research Park. That is untouched because that is a route that we are co-sponsoring with the Stanford Research Park. So that will remain the same, with 2 trips in the morning and 2 trips in the afternoon.
Thank you for that's good logic, that the reason why Milpitas wasn't impacted that much. I really like your answer. Makes sense. Yeah, out of the 90, 80, 70, I would hope that the board would go with a 90, but realistically, the way things are going, I would probably say 80, the 20% reduction. I mean, I hate to see that, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But I definitely don't want the 70%, 30% reduction. I think that's too drastic. But those are just my thoughts. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, VTA, for being with us today and sharing all this updated information. I know the board's going to have some hard decisions to make going forward. And I know I've seen some VTA headlines, always fun to see, but rather not. But, the service levels are going to be kind of the theme, I think, for 21. So keep up the great work, and pretty interesting, the affordable housing piece of it. And so I learned that today. So thanks for the information for this item. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Chan.
On that quick note, Mayor, if I may,
Okay.
one quick note, I should make a pitch for this actually. On the topic of the land use impacts and how our service is going to impact that, we are really working with our municipality counterparts in the planning departments, and of course at the state and local level, to make sure that this information is made aware of. And so next week on October 14th, we are hosting an open house forum for those who are interested in discussing the land use impacts by your transit service plan. And your planning counterparts should have already received this invite, but if you feel that, of course, your city manager would like to attend or want more information on that, I'd be happy to connect offline and make sure you get that invitation.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you could send me an email, I'd love to follow up.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, VTA. Thanks, folks. All right.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care. Have a great weekend.
You
You
too.
too.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chan.
Next item, we have, if we could bring back the agenda, I believe it's the pilot street sweeping program presentation by our Public Works Director. Tony, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Councilman Montano, and Zelda in the background.
He's learning. Yeah.
So this afternoon, we're here to provide a brief presentation on our pilot street sweeping program. Myself and Lane Marshall, Deputy Public Works Director, are here, and the folks who are really doing all the heavy lifting in the background will actually be in the forefront this afternoon doing this presentation. So let me introduce to you all Mivan Kusiman, who's our Senior Admin Analyst in our Solid Waste Group, and Alan Ha, who's also admin analyst in our solid waste group. So please, team, take it away.
Thanks, Tony. And hi, Mayor and Council Member. Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to be here and talk to you about this pilot project. So my name is Mivan Kusiman. I'm one half of the solid waste team here in Milpitas. Alan Haw is my coworker and the other half of the team. So together we'll be tag teaming this presentation. So we will be jumping in and out to provide you with the information. Next slide, please. So we're here today to talk about the street sweeping pilot project. This project was approved in the fiscal year 1920 capital budget, and the budget is $400,000. It's a council requested project and a priority, and we have discussed this with the Energy and Environmental Sustainability Commission, as well as the Community Advisory Commission. And we'd really like to go and talk to the different commissions committees about the project to solicit input and information and to see if there are any other ideas or just input that you had for the project. This pilot program addresses a couple of different things related to street sweeping. So they include resident concerns about beautification, reduction of litter impacts into the waterways, and it's focused primarily on residential areas. We're looking into a few different neighborhoods for the pilot project. So, we would look into the mixes of housing, and we'll go into that in a little bit, but to see what the differences are and to implement and monitor in those areas. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Alan now.
Hey, wonderful. Hopefully I'm coming in loud and clear.
Yes, you are. Carry on.
Okay, great. So as Niva and Ananda mentioned earlier, we're trying to address several different issues and concerns. The two primary ones that we're looking to address with the pilot, the first is allowing curb access to the street sweeper in order to properly clean the streets, which will in turn help with the second issue, which is litter accumulation. By properly sweeping the streets in these neighborhoods, it will reduce the amount of litter entering the watershed, which addresses the street sweeping section of the city's trash load reduction plan, as well as addressing the visual appeal of the impacted neighborhoods. Better visual appeal will also help deter people from littering, because studies have shown that once areas have reached a certain threshold for blight and degradation, they are much more likely to be subjected to activities such as littering and illegal dumping, supporting that type of negative, positive feedback loop. Conversely, if an area is clean, it is much more likely to stay clean because residents would like to keep it that way, supporting a different type of feedback loop that we're trying to promote. Next slide, please. And for the neighborhoods, there are a variety of factors that we have accounted for the selection of the neighborhood areas. The two largest factors that are weighted have been, one, identified by the city's trash load reduction plan and that are highly impacted by street litter and parked vehicles, and two, areas that have been identified by Milpitas Sanitation, that is MSI, that pose an issue for the curb access for the street sweeper. There are, of course, other factors that we are considering, which include the number of family units versus multifamily units, geographic location, street types, its proximity to commercial areas, so on and so forth. Next slide, please. So, in regards to the neighborhoods themselves, there are 4 areas that have been tentatively selected as potential pilot neighborhoods. For the sake of reference, we'll refer to these as Area 1 to the bottom left, Area 2 upper right, Area 3, which is left of Cardozo Park, and Area 4, which is along Yosemite. One item that we wanted to highlight again is that we're focusing solely on residential for this pilot. So in areas such as 3 and 4, there are commercial plazas and also an educational institution, and those won't be grouped up within this pilot program. Next slide, please. So neighborhood area 1, Ananda, sits off of 680 and is encompassed by Dempsey to the west, Edsel to the south, South Park, Victoria Drive to the east. Streets running within are Selwyn and Shirley, and this area is made up of primarily single-family homes on Park Victoria Drive. And MFDs is littered throughout the rest of the neighborhood area. And here on the screen are some pictures of what we ran into when we came on site to take a look at the parking impacts, and as well as debris and litter that's currently there on the streets. Next slide, please. It's neighborhood area 2. It sits just east of Cardozo Park and has Ellis as to the north, Gladstone to the west, Adams to the south, and Lynn to the east. It is primarily a single-family homes in terms of makeup, with the exception of Lynn and Adams. On the east side of Lynn, it is MFDs, and on the south side of Adams is also MFDs. And once again, and then up on the screen, and you see some of the parking impacts and some of the litter and debris that we ran into when we went on site to see what we should be expecting. Next slide, please. Area 3 is along Park Victoria Drive and is predominantly single-family homes that runs into a commercial area to the southern part of it. The length of the pilot area is solely focused on single-family homes, but this area is of interest because it sits as an offshoot to a main thoroughfare that is Calaveras Boulevard, and it runs into a commercial area. So we're interested to see how the proximity to the commercial area will impact litter and parking. Next slide, please. And neighborhood area 4 runs along Yosemite and is predominantly single-family homes with an educational institution and roughly in the center before returning to single-family homes. In terms of width, the street is much narrower than and area 3, but it doesn't seem to be as impacted in terms of parking, and nor does it seem to have the same amount of impact in terms of litter. But there is a lot of natural debris in the form of leaves and other items that doesn't seem to be human generated. Next slide, please. And now I turn it back on over to Miben.
So what we've been looking at is other jurisdictions to see what they've been doing, what works well for them, what hasn't. And this Excel spreadsheet right here, this is just a snapshot of a wider kind of survey that we did of other jurisdictions in the area. This one, we primarily looked at San Jose, Hayward, and Union City. When we were doing our research, we found that these three had, especially Union City and Hayward, had very robust street sweeping programs that we wanted to learn from and see how we could, do something similar. You can see here that for Union City and Hayward, we're really talking about no parking signage here. And in Union City, about a quarter of their streets have no parking signage currently. Hayward also has areas where there's no parking signage for street sweeping. We looked at the different entities that are performing the street sweeping, whether it be the city itself, the hauler, or a third-party contractor. We looked at the frequency of the street sweeping for residential, and then also the strategy that the cities have for parking during street sweeping. The thing that Union City and Hayward is doing are split streets, meaning that they sweep one side of the street on one day and then the other side on the other day. So that way, whoever is on that street that's parked can just move their car to the other side and hopefully be less impacted that way through the split street sweeping. We looked at the enforcement entity and whether it be the city itself, the police department, or a contractor to see how they're handling that and what they're doing. We also looked at the municipal code and what authority they have for citations, as well as the amount that they're citing to the residents as well. Next slide, please.
So in terms of infrastructure, the good news is that the city of Milpitas actually has a lot of infrastructure already in place to support the implementation of the pilot. Regarding Muni codes, we do not need to adopt any new codes. From the research that we conducted and was just presented, we were able to identify various Muni codes that are already in place that can help us with the implementation and enforcement of the pilot program, such as the ones that are listed on the slide. By no means it is not an exhaustive list. This is just the Muni codes that is most pertinent. And just for clarity, other jurisdictions utilize a similar Muni code for their street sweeping programs. Next slide, please. Speaking of additional infrastructure, all neighborhoods within this city of Milpitas already have a set schedule for the street sweeping program to conduct the regular cleaning. This slide just shows one of the schedules that are provided through MSI's website. And through some initial conversation that we already had with MSI, we have discussed several options that could be employed so that the pilot locations are able to be addressed with no disruption into the existing and established schedule, which is good because that means everyone can stick to the schedule that they already know. Next slide, please.
So some of the action items that we've been working on one is coordinating with MSI. So we've begun having conversations with MSI, and they're really, the boots on the ground, meaning they run the operations for street sweeping. So we really wanted to make sure that we talked to them about logistics, the scheduling of the street sweeper, outreach, how we could collaborate outreach with them, as well as talk about metrics and evaluations. So things that we're thinking about evaluating to make sure that that's something that they could capture. The other thing we've been doing is talking internally and forming an internal street sweeping pilot team. So the team would comprise of Public Works, the Police Department, Finance, Engineering, Building and Housing Safety. So you can see that it's a lot of departments and divisions that we're working with on this project to make sure that we're all on the same page and we understand what's going on, and really to get information from their divisions and departments to make sure that it works for them as well, that it's feasible. And the last thing is developing and tracking a budget. As I mentioned, it's an approved budget for $400,000. Regarding the budget, we're currently drafting the estimated budget, and some items in there, some line items include sign fabrication and installation, staffing cost, and that could include potential interns that we would have to help with the monitoring. That includes internal staff costs as well as any additional MSI costs. And then outreach. So those were kind of the biggest ticket items were the staffing costs and the sign fabrication installation. And so we're looking at the variable there to see in-house versus consultants. We've asked for some quotes and they're starting to come in right now. So we're using that to analyze budget, how that would affect the budget and how we would proceed. Next slide, please. In terms of outreach, we were thinking about both traditional outreach and we did talk about social media outreach too. We wanted to focus on traditional outreach such as postcards and door hangers. And the reason is because social media is more citywide. And this project, since it's very specific and defined by boundaries, we thought that traditional outreach with postcards and door hangers, that would really reach the audience that we're trying to notify to let know, as opposed to citywide. We also realized that Milpitas has a very diverse and multilingual population. So we wanted to make sure that there was multilingual considerations in our outreach as well. Next slide, please.
Of course, without proper evaluation, we won't know if the pilot is successful or not. So we will be collecting a lot of metrics, metrics both old and new, in order to see if we're making progress and to gauge the success of the pilot program. Some of the metrics that we're already collecting include the number of curb miles swept and the volume or tonnage of material that is swept up and collected. And we're also going to be collecting additional metrics such as the number of parking warnings that have been issued, the percentage of the streets that are blocked by vehicles, as well as conducting visual audits and assessments so that we can get proper snapshots in time to see how everything is proceeding. And we will be gathering the metrics internally, and with the assistance of MSI and other city departments, we are in discussions regarding the process in which different data points are collected and sent our way for analysis. Next slide, please.
So in a nutshell, we were looking at the street sweeping program mainly for the signage piece of it, to have no parking during street sweeping signage with the dates and times. And then we were also, looking at enforcement, and we're very sensitive to the fact that with COVID and sheltering in place, there are many people who are working from home and that there are many cars right now on the streets. So we did want to put our focus on warning people with information and providing education to the residents rather than penalties and citations. So we wanted to, the goal is to get the cars off of the streets so that the street sweepers could access the streets and clean them. And so we really wanted to make sure that people knew what was going on, that they were educated, and that they would move their cars. So we did want to focus on that before moving to any citations or penalties.
So will they be getting a warning first? And then after that, if a citation, a fee?
Yes, so we talked to PD about this actually, and we talked about creating a citation to give them essentially a warning, just to say, hey, we have this program in place. We'd like for you to move your car and consider this a warning.
Okay, I like that.
Next slide, please. So the timeline for this project, we're looking at a 12-month project. It's covering a year. And the reason for that is because we really want to encompass all 4 seasons of the year to see if there are differences or just to evaluate that. We're currently in the 3-month phase right now, doing research, forming the internal project team, coordinating with MSI, presenting to the various commissions, committees, and working on implementation. At the 6-month mark, we're looking at evaluation of the metrics, presentations to let people know where we're at right now and how things are going. Regular meetings with the project team, regular meetings with Milpitas Sanitation, and then having ongoing field surveys to do visual takes and all those evaluation metrics that Alan just discussed. And at the 12-month mark, we would look at doing a final evaluation to compare the metrics throughout the year, and then to make sure that the budget is, to see the check for the budget too. And we would do post-pilot presentations. For the timeline specifically, we're looking at December as our goal to go for, with outreach starting in November. But we're realizing as we move forward that there's many pieces that need to line up for this, such as resources, staff resources or consultant resources, and their timeline, whether we have the resources available, whether it be in-house or outside, in that time frame to do the implementations of the signage and the outreach. So we're working on that, and we're trying to get these items tied up right now to better pinpoint the timeframes.
I had a question. Will that include finding out whether this project can pay for itself from the fines that are given out? Will that include that in that study?
That will be part of the evaluation when we get a sense of how many warnings are needed in order to get residents to move their cars. And I think we'll check in partway through the implementation of the pilot, see how the education's working, how the warning notices are working, and whether or not we need to move to actually issuing citations, which would generate some of the revenue. But that's later on down the road. As Nivan said, we do want to start with education first, and then count the number of warnings notices that are needed.
And you haven't decided that yet, the warnings, the amount of warnings, right?
Actually, the Muni Code already has a citation amount for moving your car, so we would just default to that. So that's already established.
And what is that?
I believe it's $65.
Oh, but you give them a warning first, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
and
how many
Councilmember-
warnings, but how many
Oh.
warnings? One warning, two warnings, and then they get fined, or is it one warning and then they get fined?
Councilmember, I can chime in on that one there. So since this is a pilot program, really our intent is trying to figure out ways of make this thing work with the residents that are in the area. We don't want to go down the fining route. We want to go around the education route, because at the end of the day, it's about making sure that the street sweeping that's already programmed to happen can happen appropriately. So like the team already mentioned here, MSI's already has a schedule for doing street sweeping, but because the cars are in the way, it's just not been that effective.
That's the
So
problem.
yeah, so our focus really is on putting together a program to educate folks to get the street sweeping conducted. If we absolutely have to, because we're getting zero compliance, then we'll have to start looking into the fine route.
Okay.
But that's not really our intent. Our intent.
Okay, I like that. Thank you.
And then just the last slide here is just our contact information for myself and Ellen. We welcome any input or questions or concerns. Feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, right now I'll reach out. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can we go back to those two pilot locations slide?
Let's see.
The neighborhoods?
Yeah.
I think that's slide 3. Yeah, that gives you a good overview of the 4 different areas.
4 different areas. Okay, thanks.
Oh wait, I am totally wrong with my numbers. It might be. Let's see.
After this one, yes.
Okay, yeah. So these are the 2 areas.
Yeah, area 1 is around Dempsey.
Okay.
Area 2 is east of Cardoza. Area 3 is west of Cardoza on the Park Victoria, and Area 4 is on Yosemite.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah. I just have concerns about Area 1 because that's more of a medium density residential area. Selwyn and Shirley, Edsel, and even on Dempsey Road, just because I know there's a lot of parking, street parking, and I'm not 100% sure if I'm not 100% sure. I just want to be very sensitive to the community over there. If we can do the street sweeping day on a weekend, like a Saturday or Sunday even, I think that would have less of a negative impact on their quality of life. I know there's a lot of working folks over there. At some point, whenever this pilot program goes forward.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
I respectfully, I disagree with the weekends. First of all, you have to pay overtime. And then plus people are home on the weekends, and usually the street sweeping is more effective when people are at work. So those are my comments. And then the question for staff is Area 1, is it 2 streets? Was it one, or is it just one street? Like Dempsey Road, is that the area you're talking about?
So if we can go to the next slide, it has the specific map of Area 1. And then, so it's a couple of roads. So you can see here that it's all that's in red are the streets that we've been looking at.
We gotta disable the animations over there so that it doesn't shift on its own.
Yeah, just we find a balance, just the time. I just want to ensure that we are mindful of the community there, and that's the one I used to live in, and but I think Councilmember is right. Actually, I think weekday is better actually. But if we could just look for a time so that folks, I don't know, not too early. I remember living in Los Angeles years ago, and we had street sweeping, and 50 different signs on one pole. It was crazy, but I just want to make sure folks are not exposed too much to like a very early time, maybe like in the mid-afternoon when no one's really home. different times in the morning folks are leaving, but yeah, I just want to be mindful of the
Okay.
community, and I know staff will take care of that, but
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
want to note that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I grew up in San Francisco and remember seeing people get up at 5:30 in the morning to move their cars to the other side of the street because the street sweeper was coming. So I think we will be very sensitive to that. We are trying to work with Milpitas Sanitation so that we can get the street sweeping pilot route down to as tight as possible, so we can have maybe just a 2 or a 3 hour window where the cars need to be moved off one side. So we're minimizing the impact and trying to keep people from having to move their cars at 5:30.
That's it. This is it. This is public service right here. You know, thinking about the community. And thank you, Councilmember Montano. You're right. Weekend is really not a good time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just folks need their sleep just like we do, and that's kind of it. I mean, folks are working really hard. They need their sleep, and I wouldn't want to be the one to disrupt that. And then just one other thing for this item. As we go forward with this pandemic recession, there's a lot of unknown. I'm glad that this item has been approved and funded. I know this is an item that I think Councilmember Montano has been most vocal about. She has really been a staunch vocal advocate for this and keeping our streets clean. And I'm a huge supporter and in agreements with the council member.
So
I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure as we go forward after the pilot. I hate to do a pilot and then just kind of be stuck. And the timing of it, the sequence. The sequence is very important. The time frame for this. I hate to have a gap between the pilot and the actual implementation, considering the unknown of funding the implementation part of it, of the post pilot, I should say, if approved by the council. So I don't have a plan for that. I'm not asking for one, but I just hope that our city staff here, our leaders here on this Zoom, can just be mindful of, and then if you come back to us later, just showing that we put some thought into the sequence, because I know over in the Pines when we did the parking permit program pilot, I think right now it kind of is just, no pun intended, it's been parked, and which is fine, because that work we did, it's super just as valuable. It really is, and we're going to act on it when possible. But it's kind of like, is that the only route we can take with this street sweeping pilot, or can we really plan it with more of the short-term future in mind? Come back and just see something about the future of this as it looks to get approved for for permanent status. So, Councilor Montano, did I hear you?
Yeah, I have some comments.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm all done.
Oh, you're done. Thank you. So neighborhood area 1. Can you show me neighborhood area 2? Can you show me that map again? The whole bird's eye view.
There we go.
Yeah. My concern with area 1 is you have a lot of low income folks there, and right now a lot of them are not working because they're service workers. So I would focus on another area. And then I'm curious, I know I had mentioned that Rose Elementary School, that street is really, it has never, because there's so many cars there, that's the street that's so impacted with debris. I would like to see that kind of moved, instead of the Selwyn area, maybe move it to the Alexander Rose Elementary School area. Is that a possibility?
Thank you for that great input there, Councilman Montano, and I'll address that. So really the team, when we were going through trying to select locations, really looked at those two different areas there, looking at one, our trash load reduction plan that we have, which already called out areas that were problematic for us. And then we also got a lot of input from MSI on areas that have been very problematic as well. Now, that was all pre-COVID, and COVID just changed everything over. Now, areas that used to have more cars that were gone have folks home, like you rightfully mentioned. Folks aren't working as much as they used to, and those folks that used to go into work are now working from home. A lot of our staff are doing that as well. So it does change things quite a bit. The great thing is that as a pilot, we will look at these different areas that you did mention and see if we can make some adjustments to those. And since it's just a pilot, we do have that flexibility of making these changes. But I did want to also mention that what we tried to do as well was get a little bit of a mix of different areas. So we wanted to do some residential, get some areas that are highly impacted, because we wanted to get a feel for what this program really does and how we can make it work. So if we proceed with rolling it out citywide, we've had a mixed bag of mixed basket here of different fruits to look at. We don't want to look at apples. We want to look at apples, oranges, bananas, and everything else. So that was kind of the rationale of finding different areas that gave us different types of communities, whether it's low income, higher income areas. We want to get a mix of all of those so we can evaluate it properly for the program.
Oh, okay, I see. I thought you were only going to focus. You had to choose from either area 1 or 2, but you're going to do a mixed bag. You're going to do different areas.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. I misunderstood. So it is going to be parts of area 2, area 1, area 4, and area 3. So okay, that's good to hear. But that one street, I'm telling you, it's right in front of that child care center. It's always full of cars. But that might be another area you might want to consider popping in there. So
we'll definitely take a note of that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sounds good.
Awesome. Great.
One
right,
more question, if you don't mind. So you mentioned that Milpitas Sanitation is currently doing street sweeping, and I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't seen them for a long time, and I'm wondering, are they doing street sweeping? Because I haven't seen them.
I've seen them out there.
Oh, you've seen them? Okay. All right. As long as you've seen them, because I haven't seen them in my neighborhood. So, all right. Yeah. And by the way, how do we keep track that they do it?
Yeah, if we can have them publish the schedule of street sweeping out to the public, we love it.
Yeah, so currently in the Milpitas newspaper, it's posted every month. They buy an ad every month. And also on their website, if you want to see the schedule, they have it by just typing in your address and seeing what day they'll come by. And it has a little calendar on there that you can take a look at.
Okay. Also, has the city ever considered putting out some trash cans? I know some cities, they have trash cans out there. I mean, nice ones, not some tacky looking trash cans, but some nice trash cans that we put out in the public, where there's usually a lot of people walking, a lot of pedestrians, and sometimes they throw their trash. Have we ever thought about putting trash cans out there, or is that something that the Milpitas Sanitation would do, or is that just too cost consuming? What are your thoughts on that? Anybody?
Yeah. I would have to look into that. You are talking to the right team, because that is you're talking to solid waste team. There would be a cost associated with it, so it's something that I'm kind of looking down my screen for Ashwini to give me the nod here. But it's something that if it becomes a council priority, we can certainly address that during the budget process.
Sure. And Councilmember Montano, you're referring to like public litter cans. So the litter cans are out in the street or high pedestrian areas. We can take a look at that. Being somewhat new to Milpitas, I can say I don't really know the history on that. So we'll take it back and do some research.
Yeah, maybe in the future when Old Town Main Street becomes a pedestrian friendly environment, maybe we could do something like that over there. But yeah, because I know there are some cities that do have those, what do they call them, litter cans?
Like public litter cans, and in some areas like business districts, it's also, they're put out by the business district and they can be serviced by the business district. So like I said, we'll do some research on that.
Okay.
And
that sounds
and
good.
kind of history here in Milpitas.
Yeah, and then it shows the public that we are that we care about litter, that we put that out there. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the update with this pilot program, everybody. Really great to see this. I know I've seen it. This is my first time seeing it, so I really like it. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll go to Mr. Chan to carry on.
You're muted. Steve, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Mayor Tran, we do have a public comment on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chen. Please.
We have Mr. Mehta Yuvish Kurma.
Again, thank you very much, Steve, and thank you very much to City Council and as well as Mayor Rich Tran. I just wanted to mention that the city of Milpitas is right next to the capital of Silicon Valley. At least as a part of a consideration, we should consider a project where there's a innovation involved in there, where we could having pilot program established with the sensor cleaning e-waste services. Whenever sensor being filled up, they notify the public works and city of Milpitas services to clean up those. So such kind of a services would help citizen, and as well as create more awareness as well as I request to update the application of the city of Milpitas as well, which has information about the education awareness to spread within the for the city of Milpitas citizens. Thank you very much.
Chair, there's no more public comments on this item.
Okay, great.
Next on the agenda.
Okay,
So
next.
Is this for information, or there's no action, right? No recommendation for this? It's just information only, right?
This was an informational item, and we definitely take your comments on this, and the team will be working vigorously to roll this out and incorporate your comments and roll this out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Next item, Mr. Chen.
Next item is the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's Cut the Commute pledge. Can we bring the slide up, please? Okay, next slide. Next slide. Cut the commute. During the August 18, 2020 City Council meeting, Councilmember Montano requested an update on the city's Association of Santa Clara County support for the Air District's Cut the Commute pledge. In July 2020, the Air District introduced the Cut the Commute pledge, asking public agency and private company to allow employees the option to work from home to reduce air pollution and improve air quality in the Bay Area. This pledge seeks to ask employees to extend remote work option by at least 25% and formalize remote work policy in the employees' benefit package. Next slide, please. The basis for this pledge stems from the following. COVID-19 pandemic and the shelter-in-place order has changed travel in the Bay Area. This has significantly reduced traffic volume on the Bay Area roadway. The Air District found that 32% reduction in emission in the first 7 weeks of shelter-in-place order. MTC's July 2020 data shows that 80% of the traffic volume has returned to the Bay Bridge, and 55 to 60% have returned to freeways in the Santa Clara County. The Air District believes that many of the employees have devoted significant amount of resources, time, and effort to make large-scale remote work viable. As the health crisis subsides, the Air District wants employees to continue to work remotely to help reduce emission and traffic congestion. Next slide, please. The following 11 employees have committed to the Cut the Commute pledge as of today, which includes a couple of public agencies, Town of Los Altos, Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, City Association of Santa Clara County. Next slide, please. What have other cities done? Other cities such as City of Mountain View, Town of Monte Sorrento, and County of Santa Clara adopted resolution to support not only remote work, but also resolution to support reducing single occupancy vehicle trips and improving transit usage. Specifically, these resolution includes items such as reducing single occupancy vehicle trips by incentives, recommendation to increase the number of employees who can work remotely. Next slide, please. Transportation demand management measures such as bike parking, carpool, shuttle, on-site shower for employers, and increasing successful transit usage through land use policy. And lastly, support public funding for public transit. Next slide, please. In comparison, City of Milpitas' effort to reduce traffic congestion and emission is as follows. The city's general plan update includes policy to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips via transportation management measure, and increased transit appeal and utilization are being developed. The City of Milpitas also has a telecommute policy in place where the employee job function permits. This currently allows a great portion of the city's workforce to work remotely right now. The city also has a commuter benefit program for its employee. This program provides commuter checks towards purchase of transit pass. And lastly, the city have installed quite a bit of electric vehicle charging station to support emission-free electrical vehicle at the City Hall, Public Workshop, as well as the library garage. Next slide, please. And that concludes the report. If you have any question, I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah,
Montano.
I have one question. I noticed that shuttle services weren't on there. I know we brought that up, and it was really highly discouraged because of the cost. But you know, I think in the future we're going to have the self-driven cars. What are they called? Those
autonomous vehicle.
Yeah, and you know, if we can, I think in the future we can have shuttle services with autonomous vehicles. That might be a way. I just think that should also be included, even though, you know, we already did it. You guys, the city already did a presentation and we found that it was just very expensive. But you never know. Maybe it's a goal. Doesn't mean that it's going to come to fruition. But I think that should be something that we should put on that list, you know, as a goal. But I want some feedback from you guys. What do you think?
Mayor Tran, could I?
Please.
Thank you, Councilmember Montano. So what Steve covered was really just examples of things that in a draft resolution. We are looking to you today to see if it's something that you're interested in and would like direction, give direction to staff to work on a teleworking resolution, which could include some of the other things like you're talking about. We are also, as you mentioned, we came to you with the shuttle report, which showed it to be really not very cost effective. But we are continuing to look at other options, including VTA just had a funding announcement. So we're looking to form a partnership to do kind of app-based microtransit as well. So the last mile problem continues to remain, and we want to tackle it in a variety of ways. And we could use sort of the resolution has very broad language as to areas we should explore. So we could definitely include that. This is something you'd like to us to move forward with.
For me, I would say yes. It might be 10 years from now, but at least we have it there, you know, or there might be some new technology that might come in that can provide some type of shuttle service. And like I said, automation of those vehicles, I think that's the future. And that would really save costs. You don't have to have a driver. Yeah, what do you think, Mayor? Do you think it's your thoughts? For me, I would like to add that in, but
Yeah, I'll support that.
Okay. And so just to confirm, Mayor and Council Member, you'd like us to sort of bring something back to Council, a resolution back to Council on this? Both items are, of course, connected, cut the commute pledge as well as the resolution. So would you like us to spend some time on it and bring something forward?
yeah, I would. But can you show me that last slide where it had some of the goals?
Sure.
And then also, what about the other cities? If you can look into what they're doing in terms of shuttle services. I know Palo Alto has a shuttle service in place, and Union City has their own bus transit system. Even even in the valley, there's like cities that are small, they're farmland cities. They have their own bus system. And I go, wow, that's so. Yeah, I think you know, like, I'm not saying that we could do it now because we don't have the funding, but at least put it out there for some future. Maybe some other city council might want to endeavor, you know, spearhead it. I'm not sure, but you know, it all depends on the funding, and maybe at some future time we will have the funding, but I'd like to see it at least be on there.
Sure, yes, we can do that certainly. And we'll look at kind of what other cities, for the shuttle, we did look when they were working on it, but maybe there's other options as well, as you noted. And the biggest cost, of course, for the shuttle was the cost for the drivers, right? So
Right. It might be autonomous, you never know. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, great. Any public comment, Mr. Chan, for this particular item?
Yes, we have one public comment. Frizzy is the name.
Hi, thanks. I was just listening in on Facebook and I just had a quick question because it's very interesting. But I wonder if the city has any resource at all to try to influence some of the businesses, you know, I guess the bigger businesses that are in our city, to have them kind of make this pledge as well.
I think we did have that at our last, when we had that shuttles presentation. We were thinking about involving the business community as well. If you recall, I think our deputy director manager can touch on that to give you more feedback.
Yes, thank you, Council Member. So I think two maybe different things. So we had talked about reaching out to the businesses to fund the shuttle cost. But I think the question from the community member is if we could have our employers also sign on to the pledge and kind of do the same thing for their employees. And some of the cities have done that. So yes, we can certainly look into that, encouraging them to kind of sign on to the pledge and, you know, cut the commute pledge.
Yeah, cut the commute pledge. Oh yeah, okay, that'd be good.
There's one more comment, Steve.
There's one more public comment. Mayor Tran, from
Yes, please.
Mecca, Yuvish Kurma.
Thank you very much, city staff, Mayor Rishtran, and Council Member Carmen Montano. I wanted to echo out the Council Member Carmen Montano's comment about the autonomous vehicle program. In the city of Mountain View, Google does provide the grant services, you know, in order to run the autonomous vehicle services. And I also wanted to mention that the California Volkswagen Grants Program, they are currently open with providing the grants for running a zero emission vehicle. So certainly, I certainly support the Cut the Commute campaign and as well as the initiatives as a part of running a program for the seniors and for the city of Milpitas. Thank you very much.
And Mayor Tran, that's the last public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Well received. I encourage residents to also continue to email us as another form of communication. Okay, so I'm going to go to item number 6 now on the agenda. Other topics. Let me go to you, Mr. Chan. Do you have any other topics?
I have no other topic to add for this meeting.
Thank you very much. And then I'll go to my colleague, Councilmember Montano.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Just one more. Can you, at every meeting that we have, you could, well, not every meeting, maybe periodically, let us know what our, what do they call it? The standard, what is the standard of our roads? You know, they have a term and I can't remember that term.
PCI? Is that what
Yes.
you're referring to?
Yeah,
Payment
yeah.
Condition Index. So I could speak to this again. The city's payment condition index is currently 73. We assess the payment condition annually, so it wouldn't really change from month to month, but more annually. We'll update that information to the committee.
Okay, so right now ours is 73?
73, which is considered good condition by MTC standard.
Okay, and it goes from what to what? What's the highest?
It goes from 0 to 100.
Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, I know what I'm so proud of our city is that we use on our general fund some of those monies to make sure that our what's it called, PC something, what?
PCI.
Our PCI, and we've all, I know every council, they want to make sure that our PCI is right up there, because other cities like our neighbor, their PCI is pretty bad, and they even had to ask the voters to put a special tax just so their roads can be paved. But I'm glad that, and the reason why theirs were so bad is because they weren't keeping up with it, and we keep up with our PCI. We make sure that our roads are kept, because once you let it go, it gets worse and worse and worse. So I'm so proud of our city that we're able to do that, keep that PCI up there. We have nice streets that are, for the most part, they're paved pretty well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Montano. Hey, Mr. Chan, what's our average PCI in the last few years? Is it consistent, or are we up or down?
Generally, it fluctuates from year to year. Last year, we were at 74. This year, we are at 73. That reflects on, the number of street we pave. Some of the larger street requires more expenditure, so PCI wouldn't significantly change when we do larger street, but when we go to smaller street, because they are narrower, they require less expenditure to rehab, so we get more roadway completed on certain years, so it fluctuates up and down slightly, but in general we are staying at the low 70 and the good condition.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, I don't have any other topics. It's certainly a busy time here in Milpitas this month. And so I look forward to the next meeting on Friday, December the 4th. Should we look for the same time? Is that okay, Councilmember Montano?
Yeah, it sure is. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so what was it, 3 o'clock? Yeah. Does that sound good, Mr. Chan and everybody on the city? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so great. That'll be our next meeting, and it's Friday, and we just hit the 90-minute mark. So I just want to wish everybody a happy weekend. And it looks like the weather is getting a little colder, so please stay safe, considering all the public health risk. Councilor Montano, you got any last words?
No, just stay safe, everyone, and have a great weekend. And yeah, I can feel the weather is changing, so just stay bundled up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you so much.
Thank you for a great meeting.
Yeah, that's a great meeting, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.